Cannabis has been around much longer than any of us. It began as a textile fiber in 2727 BC. It was made illegal during the Great Depression, and in most cases it is still illegal in most countries. Illegal or not, there is an event in Amsterdam called the Cannabis Cup Competition, which showcases award-winning marijuana. Mark Haskell Smith is a talented writer who studied up on his botany to go in search of pot varietals and check out the growers and consumers of this controversial herb. The stories are wrapped in his first nonfiction book called Heart of Dankness. It is my pleasure to welcome author, writer, musician Mark Haskell Smith to Studio 4 to tell us more.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, you are a man of many colors.
Well, I try. I just, my motto is follow the story. Like whatever's interesting, you just go and stay interested in it.
And when did you first hear about the Cannabis Cup?
I heard about it probably like 15 years ago. I was in a Hollywood meeting and these producers were saying, we want to do a mystery set at the Cannabis Cup, like there's a murder and everyone's stoned so no one remembers what happened. What do you think? And I was like, the Cannabis Cup's interesting, but that's a really stupid idea. So
That sounds like Hollywood to me.
It's very Hollywood. But anyway, so then I wrote a novel called Baked it has something to do with the Cannabis Cup because I was fascinated by what happens if you win the cup. Then these botanists have created these strains with these seeds that are worth millions of dollars. And I thought, now that's interesting. And then when I went to research it for the novel, I met some of the players in that world. And these are guys who are like fanatical connoisseurs. They're really interesting people. One was a former Italian paratrooper. There's these two guys from LA who just had a dream, went to Amsterdam, and it's a fascinating people. It's a great world.
I like those two guys, Dan and Aaron.
Don and Aaron.
Don and Aaron, yes. That's the ones you're talking about?
Yeah.
The two guys with the dream. Tell me about them, because they have do they call it a cafe, a dispensary, a something over there?
Well, they sell seeds
in
over
Amsterdam.
there. In Amsterdam. They started out in Los Angeles. They grew up there. They were just kids who really liked cannabis, and they liked all different kinds of cannabis. So they were always collecting. They were sort of like, they were a beginner connoisseur, so they collected like seeds, like, oh, we like this, and they would just put it in a little envelope and save it. And then they decided to start growing their own strains, and then started to feel the heat from the DEA and maybe the local police, so they thought, we'll go to Amsterdam. Well, they saved up enough money for 2 years. We're just gonna go and just try it out. And they went, like they had a dream, and they went, and the next thing you know, they won the Cannabis Cup, and they are now, probably the biggest players in the cannabis seed business.
And do they have a shop?
Yeah, they have a seed shop called DNA Genetics that's there. You can go in and buy any of their seeds.
So your first trip to DNA Genetics?
Well,
dare I say trip?
No, I was just a stroll. I went there, and they were very accommodating because I'd written this article about the Cannabis Cup for the LA Times. They're LA boys, so they were like, whatever you need, come on out, we'll help you out. And so, I just went to Amsterdam with this sort of vague promise, like, yeah, just come ask us questions. So I rent an apartment, I go, and they're very, very sweet guys. They're accommodating, and they're such true believers in what they're doing. I mean, they really spend all their time doing this. They're for self-taught botanists, they're experts about.
So they're like winemakers, really.
Exactly.
Except it's not wine.
It's not wine, but it has the same. It's all done the same way. It's an organoleptic way of analyzing stuff. You smell it, you taste it, you smoke it. It's the same way,
And if you win the Cannabis Cup, I assume that determines price of seeds, popularity of seeds. Like, this is the big thing. This is the Mardi Gras of pot.
It's the Olympic Games, yeah.
The Olympic Games.
Yeah, with the Mardi Gras atmosphere. Basically, it's sort of a standard seed of a good quality cannabis might be like €5 for a seed, but if you win, it could be 15, 20 euros. I mean, it's worth, the seed business alone is probably $100 to $200 million a year business.
Really?
Yeah.
So when you ask Don or Aaron, what's the best? What's the creme de la creme? A sativa, how many are there? There's a sativa and indica subspecies, and then there's a little one
ruderalis
that no one smokes.
No one smokes it. It's a very low-growing kind of bushy plant but people are experimenting with it.
Okay.
But who knows what it does?
So when you say to them, ever heard of BC Bud?
Oh yeah, they know. They know all about it.
They do.
Well, Aaron's married to a Canadian, so
The plot thickens.
The plot.
and how does BC Bud measure up?
It's
do
some
they
of the,
say?
Some of the best
experts.
Oh, it's some of the best bud in the world. I mean, you have in this area some of the most skilled cannabis growers in the world.
And we raised the Prince of Pot, as you know, in this country.
Yeah.
And he's now in the jail in the USA.
I know, poor Mark Emery.
One Mark Emery. How do you feel about that?
Well, one, I mean, the guy was just selling seeds. He was not a terrorist. He's not really doing any kind of major crime. And for me, I'll throw it back to Canada. It's like, I'm surprised Canada would extradite one of their citizens for selling gardening supplies to send him to a jail. Online, to send him to a jail in Mississippi. I mean, come on.
Yes, we gave him up. And one of our mayors, Larry Campbell, made the book, Heart of Dankness, because he believes that we should legalize marijuana.
Yeah, a lot of...
Or at least decriminalize, legalize.
Yeah, legalize. A lot of really smart people think it should be legalized and regulated, you know. I mean, the UN just did a big study, you know, Kofi Annan and George Shultz from the States and some of the presidents of Mexico and stuff.
Sure, and some police officers, certainly some people in high places. As you know so well, it's not just stone skateboarders wearing beanies who are smoking marijuana, legal or not.
Steve Jobs, Carl Sagan, famous stoners, you know. So
now back to you and your beginnings, Kansas.
Yes.
Your first experiences. Can you talk about it, or will they arrest you?
I think I'm okay. At least I'm out of the country, so right.
I was thinking, but we can send you back.
Well, my first experiences were like, I think probably most high school kids. You know, someone's older brother had some crumbly green stuff in a plastic bag, and you know, you emptied out your parents' cigarette Pall Malls, and you stuffed the stuff back in and tried to smoke it, and you know, then nothing happened. You coughed a lot. You know?
Yeah, and it wasn't Connecticut. No, it was the other. So, but you did experiment a bit with different drugs and all of that, and then you grew up.
Sure, yeah.
So to speak.
I was, you know, came of age in the 80s where, you know, what I tell my kids, you know, who are now 20, but I say, you know, we didn't know how bad it was back then. No one knew what the damage would be for like people, you know, because cocaine use was so casual back in the 80s.
And LSD and all of that until your friend jumped out a window or something and you said, don't do that.
Right.
Timothy Leary is wrong. Incense, you lit incense to cover it up and all of that, that's changed a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to this word, dank, because it threads through the book. What does dank mean?
I actually love that the counterculture takes words that are kind of unpleasant, like sticky and stinky and dank, and turns them into like positive adjectives. So dank, when I would ask people, like, what does dank mean? And they'd be, oh, it just means really good. It means awesome. You know, or I'd say, well, or someone else would say, oh, it's sticky, stinky bud. You know, and someone else would be, no, it's this other thing. But as I got more and more into it, and you talk to people who are more real connoisseurs, like John Foster, who's runs the Gray Area coffee shop in Amsterdam.
Yes.
He's like, dank is, you know, you have good genetics, a really interesting plant that's been grown really carefully and really beautifully, like artisanally grown cannabis. But then you smoke it with some nice music, with your friends, maybe a nice wine, and it's the situation that makes it dank.
I see. So it's the love, the poetry, the vision, the spirit.
Yes, it's all there. And there are other people that say that dank is actually a cultural thing. It's a connection. It's how people connect through the plant and relate to the plant. And so you can have like a banker in Dusseldorf and a skateboarder in Buenos Aires and a TV host in Vancouver, and they all relate to each other through their
dankness,
through their love of the plant. Yeah.
I see. So who coined it? Do we know?
Skateboarders in Washington State, supposedly. The University of Oregon have a slang linguistics department, and they think that it was snowboarders, I'm sorry.
Snowboarders.
Who first coined dank to be used as a potent marijuana.
Because my granny would tell you, and perhaps your granny would tell you, that dank was like moist. Your granddad would go to the root cellar.
Right.
If you had such a thing in Kansas.
Well, of course.
And say, it's dank down there, Doris.
Yeah. Yeah, dank meant, cold, smelly, moldy, unpleasant.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if pot is dank, it's awesome, so to speak. It's an experiment. It's an experience. It's all of that.
Yes.
It's
dank.
Yes, orgasmic. It's dank. So
A dank orgasm. I don't even
I
want to
don't
think
know.
about
We
that.
won't go there. No, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the heart of dankness. Mark Haskell Smith, our guest, he's a screenwriter living in LA at the moment. Underground botanists, outlaw farmers, and the race for the Cannabis Cup. And we'll talk more about the judges at the Cannabis Cup. Mm-hmm.